All right, got interrupted by a telephone call there, so we'll call this part 3A as we continue on. So I was talking about the permafrost, which is, again, the same issues that we saw in the subarctic, we're going to see here in the tundras, all right? But again, in the summer months when it gets a little bit warmer and above freezing, those top layers can melt, but all that water has no place to go, all right? All that melted ice has no place to go, and so the land gets really boggy. You get lots of puddles and just mushy land, mushy walking and stuff like this. And there's a name that they call this up in Alaska and Canada. It's known as the muskeg, all right? And even though you might think it might be nasty for people to be walking across, it's prime breeding ground for lots and lots of black flies, mosquitoes, and gnats that will use those wet little puddles to lay their eggs and hatch out the next generation of all these insects. Not good for people because they, mosquitoes suck your blood and black flies will bite, and gnats are just annoying. Folks who do live up there will play the game of just, okay, at random you just clap at any one time and you see how many you killed in that one little clap. That's how thick they are. So, but all these little flying insects are prime food for lots and lots of waterfowl. So these areas are prime breeding grounds in the summertime for lots of ducks and geese and waterfowl and things like this that go on. Lots of these migratory birds that go up there for breeding and then fly south for the winter time. We'll see that. And that happens both in Siberia as well. That goes on over there. All right. Make sure I got the stuff. The type of plants that you see in the tundra, again, zero trees at all, not hardly any bushes or anything, at all. It's mostly teeny tiny short stuff, things like lichens and moss and sedges, which are a type, they look like a grass, they're not a grass, but they look very similar to grass, and the grasses as well and stuff like this. These areas are also quite windy, mainly just because you're right there on the ocean, so you get a little bit of the ocean land breeze going on, but they're also wide open areas, so there's nothing to block the wind. So you get that going on. Precipitation in general is quite low. It's cold up there, so the capacity, you're not going to have a big evaporation capacity going on, so they still get enough rain. They are not an arid climate at all, but it's just not huge amounts that occur. Okay. Now, the last one is easy to understand. This is an ice cap. This is where you don't have any month that gets above freezing. And again, it's for the month. We're not saying that there's never one day where it gets, doesn't get above freezing. But as a monthly average, it never gets above freezing. You have no vegetation at all in these areas. And of course, where we're talking about, these are the polar regions. Now, for the North Pole, you notice there's no land at all at the North Pole, all right? So what you have is frozen water, all right? Frozen ocean water. So it's a very low elevation, all right? In fact, we don't even usually talk about climates out in the middle of an ocean at all anyway. So the only true ice cap climate that you're going to find here in the northern hemisphere is going to be on Greenland, right here, all right? And they're not real evident, but some of these small little islands that you also see up here within the Arctic Circle and areas, a lot of these are like Spitsbergen and things like this. So you'll have some ice caps on these guys as well. But the big ice cap king is, of course, going to be Antarctica, this big, huge continent that is down here at the South Pole. All right, so here the South Pole is actually on land. Now, both of these continents, both are the island of Greenland right here, all right, and then all of Antarctica themselves have extremely high elevations. They are above 10,000 feet above sea level. Antarctica is filled with mountains, all right? And the whole elevation, there's lots of mountains in the Greenland area as well. So not only are they at an extremely high polar latitude to be cold, they also have the elevation thing going on well to make it even colder. All right, so Antarctica is going to be the coldest place on the planet, combination of all those deals being at the high, pole areas and the high elevation. The record was at a place called Vostok. Now, again, this is not a country. There's no human political boundaries put on Antarctica. The only people that are here are in research stations doing scientific research. All right, there's not supposed to be any type of military practices going on here as well. Strictly scientific research belonging to everybody so we can learn about places that are going on. Vostok is one of the Russian stations where it has gotten down to minus 127 degrees Fahrenheit, where they've literally measured it right there. To put it in perspective, the freezing temperature of carbon dioxide, which is dry ice that we use, that's only minus 109 degrees Fahrenheit. So when you breathe, it freezes. When you breathe out CO2, it can freeze in lots of these places that go on. All right. Of course, the low temperatures that we find at both of any of the polar ice cap regions, combination of being the very low amount of insulation and very weak insulation that comes in, and also because of the snow, you've got reflection, very high albedo that goes on as a result of that as well, and then the high altitudes of Greenland and Antarctica. Now, they do have low precipitation, and you may often hear that these are actually polar deserts, and there are some climatic regimes, other systems that do call these actual deserts. But according to the Köppen criteria, that does not fit that. We have leftover moisture. That's what all the snow and ice is. So even though there may be a few microclimates, especially in Antarctica, where you may have, no snow that has fallen or something like this, it doesn't negate the whole area being still a polar climate, which is still considered a humid climate, because that's where all the snow and the ice is. The glaciers that are found here, these are giant continental glaciers. They can be up to 2 miles thick in places. That's a lot of excess moisture that's left over and not used up every year that goes on. All right. One thing that is found here in these polar regions is that it's extremely windy. All right. Again, with the buildup of the snow, even though there's lots of mountains, the mountains are filled in. Okay, so all the cracks in the mountains are actually filled in with the ice. So other than a few peaks here and there, it's a lot of wide open expanse areas. And it is very windy. In fact, they average 340 days a year with gale force winds, averaging right around 60 miles per hour. All right. So remember, there's 364 days out of the year, so there's less than a month, only like 20 days or whatever, that they actually don't have gale force winds. And they still have winds on those days. They're just not gale force. They're just a strong breeze or something like this that goes on. All right. So, as the ice caps, those are very easy to understand. Both tundra and right on the edges of ice caps, you will find some critters. These are going to be predators that are just, hanging out for a while. Of course, down in Antarctica, you will find penguins that do breed on the land, but of course there's nothing to eat on the land, so their food is the fish, and they go fishing. There's lots of sea creatures, everything from leopard seals and Weddell seals, and that are swimming around, and whales in these waters in both North and South America, of course, America and hemispheres. Up in the Arctic areas, of course, you do have polar bears, which are again on the outer edges, and of course, anyway. But again, they are predators. They are fishing and eating other critters that they find out on the tundra areas when they're going along. All right, so the last climate that we're covering, we're just going to cover very briefly. These are the Highland. All right, this is a catch-all climate that's been kind of thrown in. And what's going on with a Highland climate, it's where you've got a very tall mountain. All right, and don't have to worry about memorizing any elevations here. But we know as you go up into the atmosphere, all right, it is going to get colder, all right? It's colder at the top of the mountain than it is down below. We've already done all those labs and discussed that as much. But what you'll end up seeing is that these changes in temperature will mimic the different latitudinal temperature changes we see in the regular major climates. So you can have one mountain, which is, just a small space, and it can have literally everything from a tropical rainforest down at the base all the way up to a Antarctic ice cap at the top. All right, and then all the temperature regimes of all the other meso and microthermal climates falling in between. So instead of trying to actually map that out on a map or talk about it, we just lump sum all these mountain regions into what we call Highland climate, which means it's a whole variety of stuff in one little spot. All right, so these different levels, they have altitudinal zones which go by different names. And at the very, very base, all right, if that is the normal temperature for the surrounding land, we have what is called Tierra Caliente, which means hot. These names came from the South American mountains, so they're all in Spanish names. So I'll tell you what they were. Again, you don't have to worry about the actual elevations and stuff. Just know the order that they go in. So you got Tierra Caliente, which is like tropical climates. All right. You get up a little higher, you have the Tierra Templada, which is like the temperate climates. This is, it's much cooler. And in fact, in many tropical areas, you'll see most of the population, if they've got mountains to move up into, they'll move into that level, all right? Because it's not near as hot as it is down on the base in those tropical areas. Then you get up to the Tierra Fria, all right, which is going, I'll read off the stuff here in a second. Then you get Tierra Helada, which means frozen lands. It's like the tundra, all right? And then you get the very top, which is the Tierra Nevada, which means ice-capped, okay? It's snow-covered. That's what the word Nevada means. It means snow-covered, all right? So the temperate is kind of like the mesothermals. The Fria is like microthermals, all right? Helada is like the tundra. And then again, Nevada is the ice cap that goes on. Okay. So let me just kind of briefly show you on a map where a lot of these, where you've got mountains that are high enough for this to occur. The Smoky Mountains in Tennessee don't fall into this. We're not high enough. That's over here. In North America, mainly we're talking about a lot of the Rockies that run through here. You can find that, all right? And then there are mountain ranges that go down into southern Mexico and these areas, and also into Central America, okay? And then, of course, the dominant ones here in South America are going to be the Andes. These are extremely high ice cap permanent glaciers along most of the tops. That's why it's white. You can see that, all right? In Europe, we have the Alps. Well, you'll find those highland climates and many around over here. And again, they've also, permanent ice caps in a lot of these that fall through there. I'm sure there are some up here in Norway as well. These very often, you can see, these are the Himalaya and the Himalayan Plateau. All right, and then these are the Pamirs and other related ones, so you'll find the same deal that goes along here. But you'll also find some, we don't quite have the super high mountain ranges as such. In Africa, there are a few that are found in this region. It's known as the East Rift Valley, and they do align that. But literally right on the equator, in these areas right here, all right, in the savanna areas and stuff, there are volcanoes that are extremely tall and have permanent ice caps on the top of them. There's Mount Kenya and Mount Kilimanjaro that, I think Kilimanjaro is at like 1 degree north or something like this, and Mount Kenya is literally right on the equator. Big, tall, volcanic mountains with permanent ice caps, the glaciers on the top. Now, these have been shrinking in recent years, not due to a change in coldness, but in a change in precipitation. But the temps are, never get above freezing in those areas. I'm going to put this down for now just because the book is really heavy. All right. But again, talking about these different layers, people have taken advantage of these to grow different types of crops. Of course, in the Tierra Templada, which is the mesothermal, and the Fria, which is the microthermal, those are often good for, the potatoes that we're used to, and tomatoes and stuff like this grow in those levels.